Hello. Okay. Uh, let's see. So we're gonna start debunking this long video. Black Star Line made. I've already prepared some points on this, so let's just get over with set the volume here. Speed up the video a bit. Okay, so you're gonna go by this one by one. Okay. Skip this plastic stuff. Okay, so thermal stress. Okay. With web link for reference. Oh, he didn't drop any links. Great. Um, okay, so to start off with, Aaron or Black Star Line uses the other ship as basis, which we know that these cannot be compared to Titanic, as Titanic has a different way of behaving than these ships. Okay, so he says here that rapid thermal change have caused many large vessels to buckle amidships and break. So he's trying to say here that apparently Titanic had thermal stress during the voyage, which caused her to break in half later on in the sink. Well, he does somewhat have a point in these first minutes, but apparently, basing on what we see today in the wreck, there's no forensic evidences for thermal stress on the breakup. The double bottom has no. Um, I'm not gonna point out that point yet since it hasn't got to that point of the video, but the main basis of this point is that there is no thermal stress damage at all or any evidences of it in the wreck that there was actually a thermal stress. So that leaves us to debunking this point. Longer vessels were most at risk of breaking amidships. This is actually true. Thermal stress is actually a thing, but the thing here is the thermal stress didn't happen on Titanic. There's no forensic evidence or physical evidence at all on the wreck of the ship that it broke due to thermal stress. It was just due to stress on how the Titanic behaved by the time it reached a very high angle. Let me just lower the volume in case people can't hear me. So let's continue playing. On Sunday afternoon, she listed to port. The ship was put through enormous stress that night. When she got the iceberg and heeled to port. She to port right afterwards. Hangman. Oh, okay. So this.
Under the smoking room.
Okay, so this is one of the testimonies. Apparently, it's one of Hugh Walters. They testified hearing the iceberg coming from as if it was from below. The problem here is that it wasn't actually the iceberg damage wasn't from below, as evidences show that there is no damage on the flooring of the ship or like below the hull, as there was not even a single account saying that water bursted from below. Most of them were on the side. So this debunks this part. The only way to explain why Woolner testified that he said that he felt it under the smoking room is the fact that as the ship hit the iceberg, the vibrations could travel elsewhere around the ship. So we could say, or in a different manner, that the vibrations traveled around the ship, and for Woolner, it appeared that it came under him, even though the iceberg was gashing on the side. So yeah, that is one way to explain. Although this theory of the iceberg damaging the bottom of the ship is somewhat also popular to the Titanic community, but I am just staying with the fact that it damaged the side of the ship rather than the bottom. Because I'm sure it did not give
We could hear the grinding.
anything, any damage at all, or give significance to the sinking.
Noise along the ship's
Ship
bottom.
bottom. It's the same with Harold Bride and Hitchens over there, who recalled the damage coming from the bottom. Again, it's probably just vibrations traveling around the ship and then making its way towards the bottom, and then somewhat making it feel like it came from the bottom.
The captain told us we had been struck amidships.
Okay, the problem here is the quote of Harold Bride. The problem here of Harold Bride's testimony is that it's from a newspaper. It is barely close to being trusted, as it's from a newspaper, as journalists can actually easily manipulate this testimony. So we can't really take these stuff that as factual that easily. But reading his testimony, on the highlighted part here of his testimony, the cap where Harold Bryce says the captain told us we had been struck amidships or just aft of amidships. This points us out that he was rather unsure if the iceberg did in fact struck amidships or aft of it. So we can't really take it as factual that the iceberg had damage to the center. Yes, what Dr. Wacky. I was referring to the ice shelf theory. It's quite popular in the Titanic community.
Or just aft of amidships.
So, okay. So what Aaron is trying to, let me just back that up a bit here. What Aaron is trying to point out here is that when he used Hal Bride's testimony on quote unquote that it struck amidships, he makes it hit by the double bottom, which is a very clever move because I don't- the only problem here is if the double bottom was actually damaged by this time, water would have started to pour in here in the middle and then would have started flooding on the boiler rooms. The problem here is that none of the firemen or crew members or whatever in the boiler rooms did not report flooding yet in these areas until 1:50 to 2 a.m. So moving on to the video, let me just continue playing this. The ship's bottom may have partially buckled or cracked aft of the midships. The compartment above would remain dry as she had a double bottom. I don't think there is damage to the double bottom of any iceberg damage at all. 7 compartments were damaged as she heeled over. Well, this is a correct diagram. I haven't seen this damage before over here. I just thought it was right over these. It was, wasn't it 6 compartments? It's not 7. She lost a blade when the propeller with broken ice swirled into the starboard propeller. Oh, this is another theory. This is another theory that has been going around that the Titanic actually lost a propeller blade. This theory is actually another famous theory, but again, this is debunked as in the wreck. There is no lost propeller blade. Apparently, most of the stern's propeller blade are still well intact and still present in the wreck. So, no propellers or no propeller blade were lost at all during the sinking. They were clearly intact.
The engine was going full speed.
When the first lifeboat was lowered, the occupants could see a hog by thermal stress.
I was throwing myself with an iceberg. The engine was going full speed astern then, so I pulled the log in.
Okay. Was there something to point out there? Oh, yeah. No, not yet. Okay, so we're going to move on. Okay, so apparently what Aaron is trying to portray here is that after the ship has been struck amidships, and with the thermal stress that Titanic has been experiencing the past days in the voyage, it starts to hog in the first minutes of the sinking. The problem here is the next thing Aaron does is he quotes Caroline Bono, as which she says that as they pulled away from the ship, they noticed that she was hogged back. The problem here is once more, Aaron is taking this out of context rather. It states here that they have pulled away by the time, giving us the idea it was already 2:17 a.m. As clearly with the sentence pulled away, meaning they already stopped lowering, as that time were could have been around 2 a.m. And if I'm right, Caroline Bonnell was at the starboard side viewing the ship. This is another testimony taken out of context. Bonnell actually meant, or Caroline meant, that the ship had broken apart the moment they moved away or sailed away. This is once more debunked. So moving on to the next point.
The center was
So here again, Caroline mentions of the center was higher than the center was higher than either the stern or bow. This is another great example of a testimony taken out of context. If we were to compare this to another testimony, we could say Roberta Watt's sketch, which appears to look like a zigzag shape, that shape also shows the center higher. This can be the aft and forward towers, or rather the back end of the bow rising as the ship broke apart. This is enough forensic evidence for this, as air was filled by the back end of the ship. So that easily debunks this point. Or it could be also oop, it could be also that um yeah, Roberta Watt sketch. But anyways, as Caroline's testimony was pointed out, but if this were to be fully read without like taking out of context, this entire thing shown on the screen. Wait a second.
higher than even
Why is it not showing anything on the stream? Am I supposed to play it? But anyways, as I was pointing out, it says here on Caroline's full testimony that by the time that they had the lifeboats far away out of danger, out of the suction, which at this point we could conclude that it was around 2 a.m., they could hear the faint strains of music on the ship, and then as reading by this
stern
full
or bow.
testimony, um,
The center was
the cent he again he meant she mentions the center was higher than either the stern or bow. So let me just pull up Blender and da, 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 final plunge simulation. Here's the file. Let me just open Blender. Okay, so let me show you guys an example of what could the center that Caroline Bonnell meant. It's still opening. There we go. So as you can see here in my theory pre-visualization, let's just use my theory as basis. So as the moment the ship breaks apart, come back to this. This is the moment the ship breaks apart. This is also the same viewing from the starboard side. So if we were to connect Caroline's testimony with Roberta Watt's testimony or sketch, it's still the same with the bow. Um, wait, what was that? What was the center being higher, which these towers could be the center she was referring to by the time the ship broke apart. Then the stern or bow. From the starboard side, it does look neither of the two are being higher than the center. So that is easily countered by Roberta Watt's sketch. And that's debunked. So moving on back to the video.
higher than even the stern or bow.
Okay, apparently Aaron or Black Star Line mentions that the bulkheads or doors were jammed. Okay, since he shows a newspaper, we heard which will use this one won't work. Let's try another one. Supplies testimonies. The problem the problem here is that bulkhead doors were never jammed. Titanic's bulkhead doors or watertight doors were designed to close as water reaches it. It can also be opened manually by the coal workers and firemen on the ship. In the video, it is seen that it claims that they testified the doors were jammed. However, reading testimonies, if these doors were actually jammed, it would have supposedly flooded in the middle. This is not possible as people like Barrett recalled boilers flooding one by one, like Boiler Room 6 by 12 midnight to 12:30, Boiler Room 5 by 1:10 a.m., and Boiler Room 4 by 1:30 to 1:50 a.m. This timeline alone disproves that water made its way to the middle and the bulkheads being jammed or not being closed at all. This is once more debunking Aaron's claims or Black Star Line's claims on the V-break sinking. Anyways, continue. What's next here? Okay, so the next claim here is that Titanic is settling bodily because this is one of the portholes. Again, one of the testimonies taken out of context. Okay, so I'll slow down here. There is no evidence for Titanic settling bodily for people like survivors from boats 13 and 15, and especially cutter boat number 2 or emergency boat number 2, where Boxhall was at the time. They recall seeing the ship's propellers rather being halfway out of the water by the middle. The time the ship was if I believe correctly, was around 1:30 to 1:50 a.m. The ship cannot settle bodily unless there is damage in the middle. Going back to thermal stress theory, which we all know is impossible and we already debunked earlier, will not be supporting the idea of it anymore of it flooding towards the middle. This alone, the fact that thermal stress is impossible, the bulkhead doors or coal bunker doors shut completely without being jammed, and other stuff like water traveling through the middle, this alone already ultimately disproves the V-break theory. Which, in short, the V-break didn't happen at all. Okay, so anyways, even though we've already debunked the V-break theory just 6 minutes into the video, let's just continue since the person twisted testimonies. Okay, going back, he quoted Boxhall. Okay, as reading here, Boxhall's testimony is taken out of context. Excuse me. Boxhall recalls the ship in fact settled bodily. However, either he meant the ship settling rapidly or slowly, as that by the time he already noticed that the ship's propellers were coming out of the water. So let's go back in Blender. Let's have another example. As this can be easily countered actually. So let's say this is boat 2. This is boat 2's point of view. We could see the propellers are out of the water. Boxhole could see everything from this vantage point. So let's go to the part of the even keel, which is very interesting. So since when we try to read Boxhole's full testimony, he says here that he find that there was a little no suction as they were pulling around the ship. They were lowered on the port side and pulled around to the starboard side shortly afterwards, and they found there was suction and that the ship was settling down broadside. If we were to pair this with another testimony, let's take Jack Thayer, who recalled it was by this area. He was hanging onto one of the davits until the Titanic returned to an even keel. This part interests a lot as if we view it from boat two's point of view. Let's just reverse that a bit. Then let's place the point of view here as boat 2. Let's press play. If we press play, we can interestingly see the ship return to an even keel, but from Boxhole's point of view, it appears that the ship is settling bodily by the water as the ship tries to turn itself to an even keel. That alone already counters no 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 Aaron's claims of the ship settling lower into the sea, which what he did here is that he took Boxhole out of context and then deliberately make it look like he meant that the entire ship just lowered, despite despite that the fact the ship despite Box already testified that the propellers were out of the water by the time. This is one of the another great example of Boxall's testimony being taken out of context. So there's a lot of testimonies here again. Um, okay, so I think I need to reverse back. Okay, so we're gonna go by one. Okay, another testimony of Charles Jaukin here is that Jaukin recalled that they did not notice her being much down by the head. So, but if we try to understand Jaugin's testimony or Haugin, I don't know how to properly read his name, but I just know it is pronounced by some people as Jaugin. He says here that I did not notice her being much down by the head. This is another testimony, once more taken out of context, recalling where Jaugin was. Jaugin was actually by the pantry at the time at ADAC, somewhere by the third funnel. Yeah, if I'm correct. Yeah, by the third funnel. This is 2:15 to 2:16 a.m. So this wouldn't align at all if Aaron places the first sign of failure by 1:40 to 1:50 a.m. as Jaugen's testimony clearly says that the timestamp was around 2:15, as later on he then mentions the breakup. He couldn't have obviously have seen the head of the ship as the baker was by the pantry and already directly made their way for the stern as he righted out the sinking. If we were to be on Jaugen's perspective, let me just open Blender once more. He was by A deck around this area. Okay, so if we were in this area, we couldn't actually if we were in this area, we couldn't actually see the head at all. That's why. And then Jalgin would have moved towards the stern and then went over to this side and righted out the sinking of the ship. Which, or, as recalling by Jalgin's testimony, he heard buckling. So probably another reason on what the buckling sound can be instead of being the first sign of failure of the ship is that it could be one of the creaking sounds the ship could have made as it returned to an even keel. As interestingly, as the ship returned to an even keel, we could see that the entire superstructure of the ship is shifting from one side to a different side. So obviously, in that process, something would have actually have made noise. Probably from the outside, it would just sound like a rush of water as water would start to rush by the side of the deck, while in the interiors, it could sound something like buckling or moving. This once more debunks the theory of having of Jaugen seeing the fate for the failure by seeing and this debunks Jaugen not seeing the bow by the down by the head, as this for this reason is that he was on A deck. He couldn't see the bow as he or directly made his way for the stern as the ship sank. So continue. Another here is that another testimony of Caroline is taken out of context. The quote here is that I looked back to the ship and we could see the big ship settling. She seemed already to be only half her former height. This once more is easily debunked as reading to Bono or to Caroline's testimony. Another account once more taken out of context, recalling the fact that the ship returned to an even keel. The ship could possibly, from Caroline's point of view on the starboard side, the ship would have appeared to settle low into the water and looking by the bridge area from the first and second funnel length or area, the ship would appear to be also half her former height. Once more, another testimony taken out of context. So again, let's open Blender and then play the even kill simulation. I'm not really sure on where Bonnell was, so let's just place the camera here on the starboard side. I want people to pay attention to this point of view by this area here on the second and first funnel. Once we play this footage and as it returns an even keel, we can actually notice some of the portholes here are actually going down as the ship returns an even keel. Look, look, look. Most of these portholes here were still up, and then as we forward it as the moment to return to an even keel, some of it already underwater. As that is for the fact that the ship returned an even keel. With the port list happening earlier, some of the starboard side of the ship would have been exposed, which is why it would appear to Caroline's point of view that the ship settled lower into the water, and then would appear that the former height of the ship or the height of the ship decreased as it happened. Okay, that was a voice crack over there. I apologize, but yeah, the point here is it is another testimony taken out of context. As if we play the even keel simulation, it is clearly just the even keel happening and not the bow or not the ship having a low angle. I don't know, as this is what he depicted it to be at a very low angle. Yeah, as this is just impossible and would not have enough stress to break the ship. So anyways, continue back to the video. We're going to play this once more. He points out Emily Ryerson, Marion Wright, and Emily Ryerson once more. The problem here is that a great quote unquote on Emily Ryerson's testimony, a great many were open. She is referring to the portholes. This theory on every single porthole being open or a lot were open is not something to be tackled. Looking at the wreck, we can't really tell on which porthole on that fateful night was exactly open. Taking taking a look at survivors, it's seen that majority were by D-deck or the D-deck porthole that were open. But it doesn't become factual that a great number were open by the time. Some may have shut it afterwards and some may have not. So this easily debunks as the theories on the portholes being open completely has barely have any evidence of like every porthole was open, because we couldn't really tell on which exact portholes were open. This is another way of Aaron tricking people, that telling that the ship actually how do you say this, settled lower into the water by using the D deck portholes as basis for it. So this once more narrated testimony taking enough context. Marion Wright's testimony: this Titanic, reading her quote, the Titanic must have had her bottom nearly taken away by the iceberg from first class to the steerage, for she went gradually bit by bit. This is another testimony taken out of context. It may appear that Marion Wright's testimony does in fact support the idea of the bottom breaking away or giving way, but this does not ultimately conclude that it is factual. This account is the only one to mention this event out of the 712 survivors of the disaster. Her full context of the testimony recalls the ship settling slowly, going down by the head, then breaking apart at the final moment. Only taking the first quote would it appear that it like is performing a V break. Reading the full context doesn't make it look like it. The problem here is pulling up Blender once more. What Marion Wright meant that the final plunge already have started, the forward funnels have already fallen, and the part where Marion Wright at the bottom have given way is at the fact that she saw the ship break apart. That the problem here is that Aaron again once more, or Black Star Line, is taking things out of context. It would appear that the failure happened to have happened first and then the plunge, which barely has any evidence. As reading Marion Wright's testimony once more, they just took it out of context. So there's a lot of testimony. Susie Weber's testimony. I saw the lights go out deck by deck. Let me just pull back um, Susie Weber's testimony. Okay, Susie meant saw here the lights go out deck by deck, but reading the full testimony is that she states on the full context that the ship had already gone down by the head, the water making its way to the engine room, concluding that the water was around by the third funnel or to the compass tower. As in the process, the lights go out deck by deck as portals submerge or the power failing completely. She also mentions the bow less high. She may have meant as recalling Roberto Watt's sketch, it seemed that the back end of the bow was still present, so therefore could be indicating that her broken end of the bow was less high. So, pulling Blender back up, and then viewing the second before the breakup, if you were to view Susie Weber's point of view, which is in boat 10, if we look at these portholes, I want people to focus on these portholes, these specific portholes right here. So, as the second funnel falls and the ship performs a top can, we could see these portholes or windows submerge one by one as it reaches the base, as the water reaches the base of the third funnel. And then what Susie Weber probably meant with the bow less high is that this part, as the ship broke apart, the decks at this area, somewhere at B deck or G deck, were still somewhat connected, and as that happened, the back end of the bow would have risen. So playing this along with the bow still having air by the back end, it would appear that it would float. This could also support some evidences like how Carrie Chaffee still saw the bow rising. Um, Ida Hippick's point of view of the bow rising once more. Again, it can be easily countered by these points just by reading the full testimony and then having to run tests of these repeatedly. Yes, correct. Gojirando fan. It's the drag theory that you made. The ship was sagging and settling bodily. Okay, so Aaron quotes that once more. Again, Aaron are talking about the same accounts again, like Churchill Candy, Jaugen, Violet Joseph, Edwin and Trout. All of these accounts after reading were obviously taken out of context. Majority spoke that the ship were to be already at an angle of 15 to 20 degrees, as judging by how a lot of them made mention of the ship nearing the breakup, which majority leads us to the fact of the ship being at the angle of 15 to 20 degrees. The point here is Aaron is taking these accounts, or Black Star Line is taking these accounts out of context, rearranging the timeline to make it appear that it makes sense, despite the fact it doesn't at all. Okay, so continue playing. And this is the boiler rooms. Well, E-deck and flooded the main third class dining room amidships. To get all of her ship, including the stern portals, she was now sinking amidships. Okay, so Aaron at this point mentions that the ship was breaking apart. No, that the water flooded along E-deck and went amidships. Taking the fact that thermal stress is already debunked, the ship settling bodily debunked using the even keel, and the ship not hugging that early because apparently Aaron here or Black Starlin just took the accounts out of context. It would ultimately conclude that the ship would not make water behave this way or travel towards the center, especially regarding the fact that bulkheads weren't jammed by the time. So it wouldn't make sense if water traveled horizontally, then flood amidships, then forcing the ship to bend more. This once more ultimately concludes no V-break took place during the disaster. Well, what do you know? What a surprise! We've debunked so much and we've barely have finished the video. Oh my god. Okay, so many ships have broken as a result of misaligned cargo. Again, once more, thermal stress is debunked. Moving forward.
Watch at that. We're going to start at one. Mr.
If I'm right with Alfred White's testimony, um, the problem here is that they wanted to start an engine once more. Uh, where was that? I'm trying to find my claim here. It's here on fact number 2. The heating of the engine is not enough to weaken the ship. The starting of the engines once more was around the time after the ship struck the iceberg. This was the time, if I was correct, the ship was made to move again to run half its speed before stopping for the final time. It was around, if I was correct, 11:43 or 11:46. Then by the time after that, the ship began to vent steam. As Aaron claims here further in the video, he says that pressure began to build up. The problem here is all steam were vented safely. There was no pressure built up. As looking at the smoke boxes, the funnels, and vents, there is no pressure or steam damage. The reason as to why the power was going as the ship sank is that the reason behind this is that boiler number 2 was abandoned. Although abandoned actively where the boilers were still running. This remained on until the final moments of the ship, until the breakup took place by 2:17 a.m. Once more, it makes mention of thermal stress again. This thermal stress, as we discussed earlier, is already debunked. So yeah, there's no forensic evidence of it. So moving on, and I'll just point this out as well. If this were to happen as claimed by Black Star Line or Aaron or whoever the person is behind this, the boilers being exposed to water would kill off steam. This results to no steam, no power, no light. Californian recalled seeing the lights, which they believe to be the RMS Titanic, disappear by 2:05 a.m. Putting it on Titanic's time would be 2:17 a.m. If the lights were to go out early, it wouldn't match California's claims as to what they have saw as to what they have seen during the night of the disaster. So it wouldn't really make sense if the middle failed first, if it already failed first at such an earlier timestamp. So moving, her coal bunkers were starting to breach. Blade wreck.
South.
Oh yeah, this is one of the actually there's this Aaron takes this lump
Mostly coal,
coal.
extending nearly a mile south of the stern.
The problem here is that I am actually not sure on whether how this would have behaved, but if you were um the 1,000 feet length of coal on the wreck, according to Aaron, proves that by 1:40 a.m. the ship's double bottom had already failed. The fact here is that the length of the coal alone signifies that according to what Black Stallion or Aaron believes, the ship breaking up by 1:40 a.m. would just be impossible as number one, flooding of the area at such an early stage would cause the ship to have its power go out at such an early stage. Another way of this trail of 1,000 feet or coal could have been from the breakup of the ship. Recall that the bunkers were shattered. The shattering could have spread an enormous amount of count or numbers of coal behind the stern as the ship sailed to the bottom, or the hypocenter of the ship in the wreck could have been somewhere near or behind the stern, and as the bow went down, left trails of coals falling towards the seafloor. Well, that was easily debunked. So, moving on. Okay, let me just pull up a visual representation of what I'm trying to say. So, um, oop, cats. Okay, I was trying to recall this. We see that the bow, here's the bow. We do know for the fact that the bow sailed off like a torpedo. So, recalling that the bunkers were somewhere in this area, let's leave annotate. Let me have this annotation here. Um, Jesus Christ, these cats. I apologize. There's cats fighting outside my home. So let's say that the breakup here took place. Yeah, over there. Let me just erase that. So as that happened, the breakup here taking place, and the coal bunkers being shattered in these areas. Coal could have traveled from here to here, extending from these areas. Oh my God, these cats. Um, and then would have traveled and made their way, scattering to these points. We do know that coal is light, so obviously it would travel freely in these directions. So yeah, that easily debunks the point of coal failing somewhat that early. Okay, so we do if we place the wreck, the bow would land here, the stern would land here. So if the hypocenter was here, it would be here, and the coal would scatter in these areas. So again, once more, that easily debunks the point of coal, or yes, the fact that the bunkers failed to the early time and then started to pour out of the ocean. Okay, so moving on back to the video. Let's play. Oh my god, it has been 44 minutes already and we're still at the 10-minute mark. It's gonna be forever.
At 1 o'clock, Mr. R and Mr. Slow
Okay,
as
for debunk this part. Cool, so the port out. Lifeboat 15 was being lowered at this time under the command of Frank Dimon. Something happened, quote unquote, and their ship and their boat, rather, or the lifeboat 15 crashed against the
told
side
off
of
to
the
man
ship.
this boat.
Again, this is, oh my god, another testimony taken out of context. Dimond claims that their boat had been damaged by striking the ship's gunwale when they first lowered. Continuation, she was leaking on one side just about the water level, where she had been bumped on the ship's gunwale. This quote unquote leaking could be one of those I forgot how you call those, but those thing where they pour water out. Um it's, if I'm right, let me just pull the blender up again. It was somewhere in this area of where actually boat 15 was, in these areas. They were pouring water out to decrease the ship's flooding, if I'm right. The pumps, yes, the pumps. I recall them now properly. So there were pumps on the ship's side. They were pouring water here by this area. Boat 15 was just being lowered, so it goes down here. It could see the pumps by these areas, and would you look at that? It would make Dimon think that it was a damage from the iceberg, despite it not being that. As he mentions, he saw a leak coming from the ship's side. So, recalling the fact that the ship, that Demon's boat, had bumped the ship's gunwale, their boat would have been striking the ship's side as timestamp of 1:40 a.m., which would have been the time the boat 15 would have been launched, or before that. This was the time the Scotland Road or D-deck door would have been submerged or started to flood. Either of the two causing the factors of the ship going to a 9 to 10 degree portless. This is why the boat bumped by their side, or by the side of the ship's gunwale, or the hull, as boat 15 was in the process of being lowering away. Yes, yes, AJ, you're correct. It's the pumps. Um, okay, that's that. Moving on back to the video.
But just as he was getting into her, something happened and he was swept on one side. Our boat had been damaged by striking the ship's gunwale when we were first lowered. She was leaking on one side, just about the water level, where she had been bumped on the ship's gunwale.
At this time, the survivors in both 15 noticed the bow had only settled down as far as E-deck on the starboard side. Okay, I think I have a point on this. Lifeboat 13 claiming that the ship had set alone down by Edek. This is another claim taken out of context. Despite seeing her as low towards Edek, the same boat 13, along with boat 15, claim to see the propellers already halfway out. Opening a Titanic model includes us to have the ship already at the 3.5 to 4.5 degree head trim with a 9 to 10 degree port list. The problem here is that, let me just open Blender once more. I've been switching tabs, but I have to do it since I have to prove this as factual. Okay, so what we're going to do here is place Titanic at a 5 degree head trim with a 9 with a whoop. Oh, no. 9 degree port list, please. And then a 5 degree head trim. So, we're going for the fact that E deck was already submerged or low. Let's view it from both Force point of 15's point of view. So as they were in the process of lowering by 1:15 a.m., there they would have seen the propellers, and then looking at the other side, they would have seen E deck already low into the water. This is another claim Aaron or Black Star Line has been taken out of context. So let's just go back to the video. Continue debunking. The problem here is that a lot of these testimonies are being taken out of context without even making sense. Her stern was slowly buckling upwards. Okay, so this is where physics starts to escape. Charles Jalgin could see water entering his cabin on E deck as the hull fractured. Wait, I think I have a claim on this. Oh, yeah, not yet.
At the port side, think the ship right and the ship lost a slight list.
Here. Jack Thayer testifies. She gradually came out of her port list and, if anything, had a slight list to starboard. The problem here is another account taken out of context. The ship returning to an even keel. The ship did in fact return to this state, but however, it was by the time of 2:15 to 2:16 a.m. The claims of crew telling to the passengers to go to starboard side is indeed factual. But however, the problem being with this is that the timestamp was around 2 a.m. This only settled the ship at a much lower list, probably around 7 to 8 degrees, from the original 9 to 10 degree. The list to starboard during the final plunge. This indeed is once more factual, but once more, what Aaron takes here is that Jack Thayer's testimony. It seems that reading his testimony, it claims on the full context that shows the starboard boats were still in the process of lowering. This timestamp would have been around 12:20 to 1:30 a.m. By this time, the boats would have been prepared. It has nothing to do with the final plunge. This once more is a work of Aaron or Black Star Line taking the testimony out of context. This is the ship going from its 2.5 port list due to the coal being moved to a 5 degree starboard list. This was a pre-sinking list and not the final plunge list. Once more, oh my god, another testimony taken out of context. Oh my god. Okay, this is making me have a headache at such a late time. It's already 11:20 a.m., but I'm not gonna stop until this person stops believing the break. So, they make mention of thermal stress once more. This is once more debunked. Moving on. Okay, Forward.
Ship now, without warning, she seemed to start. This was rain. Past.
Okay, the survivors watched the tank reeling and rocking violently from side to side as the boat section was in cold. Okay, this is a huge amount of accounts taken out of context. But as reading once more these testimonies with full context, the ship trembling, bobbing like a cork, careening from side to side, as reading these accounts with full on context without cherry picking quotes, the ship would have already broken apart. An example would be of Woolner's testimony, which he claims the ship careening from side to side. This is due to the fact that the ship had already broken apart as it would have twisted from side to side. This is due to the fact that the ship is trying to settle its way properly to the water. As the ship tries to even itself out from its current starboard list, which it had before the breakup occurred. The problem here is that Aaron takes these out of context and once more claims that it is part of the twisting and walking motion as the ship broke apart. So, what the survivors actually meant. Okay, so let's view this from Woolner's point of view. So, this is where the ship broke apart. Ship settles. As we could see here, the ship is trying to even itself out. The forward tower falls. This is what Woolner sees as a crack has been pressed to the side. This part is where the ship would have careened from side to side. Port, starboard, starboard, and then port once more. Viewing that from that part, it would still make sense as the ship would try to even itself out, especially the fact that there's nothing supporting it properly anymore, so it would freely move from side to side. That easily debunks Aaron's point, so let's move back to the video. Pipes were twisted as she rocked from side to side. Okay, this is another one here. Wait, did it? Yeah, the pipes bending the other way, and evidence. Oh wait, this is not the one yet. This is not the point. Okay, so he's trying to quote survivors who saw sparks during the sinking. Okay, so debunking this, let's read that back. The stream of millions and millions of sparks that shot up towards the sky. The fact here is that the sparks were indeed present during the sinking, but leading to the sequencing of events, it is coming from the funnels, either from funnel number 3 and 2, as the ship broke apart. By these timestamps, funnel 2 created a cloud of sparks as the uptakes on the C to A deck level buckled during flooding. This evidence of water reaching that point of deck also disproves the V-break theory alone. Funnel 3 emitted also sparks as the uptakes buckled similarly to funnel number 2, but a different factor as the funnel 3 uptakes were buckled due to the fact that the ship was already breaking apart. The buckling of these uptakes alone would cause sparks to ignite the coal dust within the uptakes that were running throughout the sinking or were stuck on the uptakes on the walls of the uptakes. This once more disproves the how do you say this? The attempt of Aaron taking these testimonies out of context. Moving on. Oh my god.
We were trying to fix up a collapsible boat when there seemed to be a tremble run through the hull of the ship, and the next thing we heard were loud reports inside. A violent explosion suddenly shook the entire boat.
We heard a terrible explosion, and that's all you know, the Titanic had 4 funnels. And when we heard this explosion,
Okay, the problem here with Ruth Becker is that Ruth Becker's 4-funnel break when she tries to demonstrate it. A very quick fact to debunk this, she only used her fingers to represent the 4 funnels that she broke in the middle. This doesn't mean that it doesn't conclude that it broke apart with the four funnels still intact. This easily debunks with this is also easily debunked with other survivors who saw the first funnel fall, the second funnel fall, and Emily Ryerson seeing two funnel remain before the breakup occurred. This once more doesn't support Aaron's idea of having the breakup or have the breakup
The two
with
forward
the
funnels
four
seemed
funnels
lean,
still
and
on.
then she seemed to break in half, as if cut with a knife.
Steam was building up inside, now burst with a deafening roar. Recalling once more on how the smoke boxes work, it is indeed a fact that smoke rushed out of the funnels, but it violently rushing doesn't make sense. The smoke boxes travel horizontally. This study is shared by Pulley, thanks to Pulley, by the way. Rushing of the smoke violently could not have been from the boilers. It could have been a reaction within the uptakes of the funnels as they buckled or broke apart as sparks from the uptakes after it buckled reacted with the coal dust, igniting and causing a chain reaction, causing a sort of like a small explosion, which could cause smoke to rush up out of the funnels as the ship broke apart. Okay, so going back, I think I missed a point. Okay, so let me just discuss this. So Aaron pointed out that the pipes bending the other way could be an evidence of the stern being pushed by the current. Wait, I don't think I still passed by this here. Ah, here. It was by this point of the video.
Were all around this. There were hundreds of them around the stern of that ship. They'd all seen.
We heard these cries. We heard these cries.
Okay, so this is another way of taking it out of context. So Aaron claims here that the pipes bending the other way could be an evidence of the stern being pushed by the current. The fact here is that no. Another simple way to counter this is the fact there could have been a starboard list during the sinking or final plunge, concluding that the pipes were bent mostly on the starboard side. An example would be is that one of Wolfric or Crunch Bandicoot's theory. He has a starboard list in his theory, which this alone already contradicts or can easily counter the point Aaron is trying to point out here with the pipes bending on the starboard side. It is although factual that there could have been a starboard list during the sinking as the funnels 1 and 2 fell to starboard. So moving on to the
There must
video.
have been a mile.
What's next debunking? Ah yes. Fact, this is another fact. The ship did in fact pivot, but once more, Black Star Alliance or Aaron claims that the ship pivots when it was not vertical. Reading the full context of Jack Thayer and others like Charles Lightoller, he recalls the ship about 60 degrees. Then after that, he recalls the ship to have turned away from them. This is as the ship's stern as it went up, it pivoted and returned and turned in the other direction. This is another example of Aaron taking testimonies out of context. So let's again once more pull blender up, go to vertical, and let's go to both B's point of view. So this would have been both B's point of view. So at this point, it would appear that the ship is at an angle of 60 degrees. The ship pivots, and would you look at that? The ship has successfully turned away from collapsible B. And then it goes down. There, it just simply easily counters Aaron's points.
The ship had turned around while I was under the water. The ship pivoting and moving in an almost perpendicular position. The upturned boat stern lift and then stern of amidships.
Okay, I apologize for that. That was very rude to yawn. As the bow and stern gracefully detached, the lights in the bow turned red and extinguished, while the stern lights remained brightly lit as now receiving all remaining power. The problem here is the lights remain on the stern. A lot of people did recall seeing the lights on after the breakup, but studying the ship, the power doesn't work this way. Cutting the pipes off would kill off power completely. The only way the lights could have stayed on is that if gas lamps were to have been lit as the ship's big lights began to dim by 2 a.m. to 2:10 a.m. or an oil lamp by the aft mast. Although we are unsure whether light did remain, or as another enthusiast claimed, Game Player Z, one of my fellow friends, or one of the people in the Titanic community, he says that it could have been also a memory confusion or confusing for what they have said they saw. Also, speaking of the oil lamp, as we've recently discovered thanks to Pulley, that an oil lamp doesn't exist on the aft mast of the ship, which at the moment I'm trying to find studies of what it could have been that the survivors have seen that lights remain on after the breakup. Anyways, moving on to the next point.
She just broke in two and the ends were stick.
Okay, this is another testimony taken out of context. Excuse me. It is quoted here that she just broke in two and the ends were sticking up only for about 5 minutes. Recalling on one of Titanic Animation's videos, credits to Titanic Animations. The point here is that um, Old English works different from today. So it says here that the ends were sticking up. So taking this in context with our most recent English way of writing, this would be read as she just broke into and the end were sticking up only for about 5 minutes. This ultimately concludes that they saw the end or the stern rising
Up.
or
First, the
sticking
middle
out for
seemed to go
5 minutes. Again, this once more. First, the middle seemed to go down, lifting bow and stern into the air. What they truly meant here on the bow resurfacing is that the bow actually did not resurface, but however, looking deeper into each and every testimonies, it links more that it was the back end of the bow that resurfaced, a possibility as the back end of the bow or the broken end was still half flooded, which could have floated for at least a good 1 to 3 seconds before the bow disappeared completely. Also can be countered recalling to Watt's sketch on the sinking. So let's open up Blender once more. Let's go to Cherry's point. Let's go to Chaffee's point of view, which would be here. Ooh, here, here. This is both. This is both for this. Okay, so putting the back camera back there. There we go. So we're going to play this. We could see here as takes place, the breakup occurred. We do again taking the fact that there's still air on the back end by the bow. Oh, okay, so there. Yes, there. So the bow resurfaced for a good second before completely submerging, even itself out, and then go underwater. Then again, this proves the bow resurfacing by having a more good explanation on how it could have risen
Down,
out of the
lifting bow
water.
and stern into the air.
The Titanic was torn in two. For a moment, the great map
Split open. At the same time, the ship's bow rose up in the air as the steamer sank towards the center. The bow, which had been
This is another testimony taken off context. Again, it's just the bow. It's again the bow's back end rising.
Elevated at an angle high out of the water, floated for a few minutes, and then disappeared, while the stern section rose out of the water as if it had been hinged and stood.
the ship buckled.
Engine room, there was an
Explosions. The ship seized. The ship, after going down by the head, again, suddenly, there was another great explosion, and the bow gave a sort of jump, and then seemed to wrench away from the middle portion.
I reached a collapsible boat that was fast succeeded in cutting the
Suddenly, her nose what points. The
There's
ship
a
broke
lot
off
of
about the second from
testimonies taken out of context.
scene. The first and second.
Okay, so reading. Aaron claims the bow is partially buoyant, with a theory of thermal stress and water traveling towards the middle already debunked. We could confidently say that this is debunked. It is once more impossible for the bow to rise out of the water, especially having the fact the front is already flooded at a rate of 70 to 80%, which would make it impossible for the front portion to rise out of the water. Breathe. Okay, so moving on. Jesus.
Second funnel from four.
I looked down the doors. All
I don't really have a problem with the second funnel falling first, as it somewhat makes a little sense, but I'll just lean into the generally accepted with the first funnel falling
in their
first.
death struggles.
I thought when I looked that the ship broke at the foremost funnel.
We saw the fore part of the ship break away up to the foremost funnel.
The bow parted just in a line with the bridge.
The ship seemed to break in two forward of the first funnel.
Okay, Skidmore sketch is pulled up. Skidmore sketch, popularly known as Thayer's, even though despite the fact that Skidmore drew this art, Skidmore actually owns the sketch, not Jack Thayer. Jack Thayer, however, told that Skidmore's sketch was wrong. This once more ultimately debunks the claim of a V-break being seen by Jack Thayer, as Jack Thayer talked to Skidmore and then told Skidmore that the sketch was wrong and very inaccurate to what he depicted, or to what he said he saw. So, moving on. There were many attempts to stop reports of the ship breaking. Books were soon published which denied the reports raised by the company.
I saw these drawings in preparation on board the Carpathia.
Okay, this is one of Aaron's claims once more. Um, a second breakup, which what Aaron claims, there is no forensic evidences nor a testimony recalling a second breakup. Either if it exists, it's either the jerking motion to what make it appear like a second breakup. The ship's um, the ship's engines are falling, or the forward cylinders falling, would not break the ship for a second time. It is little to almost no stress to break it. If it were to happen, the ship would have just continuously risen and would not have broken apart, as that alone of the end cylinders falling would not cause the ship to break apart. So skipping that point because it doesn't make sense.
First, the middle seemed to go down.
Itself. Then the sight was awful.
Okay, so recalling once more, it is factual that the ship broke into three. The mentions of the middle could have been the superstructural towers, which is the aft and forward towers in the wreck that we know. The falling in motion could be accounted once more by basing on Roberta Watt's sketch, as the middle appears to fall in. This motion takes place during the Watt or jerking motion. So pulling up Blender once more, during the breakup takes place. The It's either in these timestamps that they meant that the middle fell in. The middle does appear to rise, and it is unequal on both sides, so it would appear that the ship is trying to fall in the middle. Or it could have been as the towers fell, one of the forward tower fell. This is what they could have been referred to as the middle, and as the forward tower fell, That is what they included it to be the middle falling in. And then again, once more, this proves the fact that the ship has a second breakup. Okay, do I have something to point out? Ah, this is 1 point before the stream ends. Jesus Christ. This is such a long debunking. Okay, Chrome bugged. Okay, there's the Okay, this is one of Aaron's final claims that the ship
She
keeled
operated
over to
head foremost.
port.
Just as he
Okay, so this is gonna be the last point to debunk everything. The ship tipping over to port. The ship did not tip to port on the final moments. It appears that only Jalgan recalls this, although some other like Percy Queen and then Ava Hart herself. This is easily countered as a possible factor causing the ship to pivot would have been a slight port list. This would have caused the ship to pivot as it rose. This again disproves the ship completely listing to port. Another evidence would be that as Alatri called her and sticking up for at least a long time before going under. Also, if we were to base on Jalgin completely, we should take note of the fact that Jalgin was drunk by the time. So it's not really a reliable source.
the water.
Okay. So at this point of the video, it doesn't talk about the V-brake anymore, but talks about the lights, which is not related to the V-brake. But anyways, yeah, that's just it. Okay. So that was 1 hour and 15 minutes of debunking. Great. Oh my god. I don't know what to do at the moment, but at the moment I'm planning to fix my final plunge simulation on the on the test that I've been doing for the final plunge. Yeah, I think we're done. Yeah, that's just it. So stream ends. Yes. Thanks for watching this debunking. I'm very tired. I apologize for sounding a bit lousy. But yeah, that's just it for tonight. Good night, everyone. I have to go to sleep. E. E.